Hi, my name is Emily Rena-Dozier, and I'm a housing lawyer at the Oregon Law Center. And I want to give you some information about a new law that the legislature passed, extending the eviction moratorium until the end of September and giving every renter in the state of Oregon 6 months to catch up on their rent after the end of the eviction moratorium. So the previous eviction moratorium expired at the end of June, but this new moratorium goes until the end of September. And what that means is that there are no evictions for non-payment of rent, fees, or utilities, and no evictions based on a termination without cause from April until September 30th. So a landlord can't give a notice of termination for non-payment and can't give a notice of termination without cause. A landlord can't file an eviction based on non-payment or without cause, and a landlord can't charge any late fees based on a tenant's non-payment. A landlord also can't report a tenant's non-payment to a credit agency, and a landlord can't do anything else to unlawfully remove a tenant based on the tenant's non-payment. If a landlord does any of those things, a tenant can sue the landlord for 3 months' rent and get a court order to force the landlord to let the tenant move back into their home if the landlord forced the tenant out. But what happens after September 30th? Well, after September 30th, tenants have to start paying their rent again, starting with October's rent. But tenants have until the end of March in 2021 to pay back any rent that built up between April and October. Landlords have to apply any rent payments that tenants make to their current rent and utilities first. After that, tenant payments go to the back rent that the tenants owed from during the moratorium. So after October 1st, tenants can be terminated or evicted for non-payment of rent, but only for rent that came due after the end of the moratorium. Landlords can't terminate or evict based on back rent that tenants owe until the end of March 2021. But the law does include some important obligations for tenants. Starting October 1st, landlords are allowed to ask tenants if the tenant plans to use the 6-month grace period to pay back the rent that built up during the moratorium. And tenants have to respond within 14 days to let the landlord know if they plan to use the grace period to pay back their rent. If tenants do plan to use the grace period to pay back their rent, it's important that tenants tell their landlord in writing and keep a copy. If the tenant doesn't tell the landlord that they plan to use the grace period to pay back their rent, the landlord can charge the tenant a penalty of 1/2 of 1 month's rent. So during and after the moratorium, landlords can tell tenants that they owe back rent. And landlords and tenants can also agree to a repayment plan. But repayment plans are not mandatory. Tenants do not have to agree to a repayment plan. The only things that tenants have to do is number 1, start paying rent in October. Number 2, tell the landlord if they plan to use the 6-month grace period to pay back their rent. And then number 3, pay back the rent that was owed by the end of March in 2021. If you have questions about the new law, or if you think your landlord has violated the law, you should contact your local legal aid or Oregon Law Center office. You can go to OregonLawHelp.org for more information about how to get in touch with your local office. We know that the COVID pandemic has made things really hard for a lot of people, and hopefully this new law will make things at least a little bit easier. Thank you so much for listening, and stay safe out there.